Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman. I am the streamer for this stream, and we build a Django application here. And that's a web framework if you're new to that, and SaaS is software as a service if you're new to that. So I walk you through the process of a project that I'm working through, and we see what we can learn together, or I show you a little bit about Django that I know because I've been doing Django for quite a while. And yeah, that's what we do around on the stream. So today I'm going to be continuing on an onboarding flow for my application, and I'll share the link to that over in the chat. We do have a chat, and if you want to have questions you want to ask, feel free to ask them. So this is the onboarding milestone that we're working on. And we're going to work through some of the details of this tonight. I spent the last stream explaining basically the flow that I want to apply to my application, and we're going to start to knock through each of those steps. I've only got a couple of things actually on the milestone. The rest of them were dumped into a single issue on GitHub that I just didn't have the time to split them out in a milestone, but I don't anticipate us getting through both of these today, so that should be okay. So let's start off with a couple of notes. There's a website you can join or check up on. I have mattlehman.com. There's a mailing list you can join, is what I meant to say. And that is just me writing about Python and Django. And if you want to keep up with recordings that I post on YouTube, all of those things, you can learn about me that way. And hopefully I share something that might be interesting to you. I also have presence. I have an account on Twitter. My handle is listed above as MB Lehman, so you're welcome to follow me there if you're not already, and ask me questions if you've got them. As I said, there is a chat here, and so if you want to chat with me, please feel free to do so. Just try and keep it civil. That's all I ask people. I'm going to start off with a question of the day that I've been thinking about, and that question is: when you join a new service, what kind of experience do you like to have? And what I mean by that is, do you like to just explore the app as it exists? Do you like to have some guidance on what you should be doing? Do you prefer the free-form nature of it, or do you want your hand held? And I suppose it depends on the application, but this is just to get you in a frame of mind for what we're talking about today and what I'm hoping to present in this app. So that's something to think on. So I'm going to jot this down, so if anybody later comes in and wants to answer the question, they're welcome to do so. So I'm going to say it as, what kind of first experience do you like? Do you like to explore or be told what you need to do? So think on that and let me know if you've got thoughts. Getting back to the application, we'll check in on the issue that we started last time after I'd gone through all the process steps of here's what I want this thing to do. And we began the process at the very beginning of this flow. The application I'm building is a homeschool application. It's for managing a homeschool schedule, and I'll try and bring up what that looks like. It is coming along, and this is the primary view that exists in the application. But to get to this view, hey Osoda, like to explore first. Yeah, that's something I like to do as well. So I'm going to try and balance. I think I'm going to try and balance like exploration as a possibility, but then getting back on track if you need to. So the application, as I outlined it last week, is a ton of data. There's a bunch of pieces in place. We went over the model diagram, which I'm not going to belabor. I'm not going to do that again today. But we need to get that flow in place. And I mentioned that there's a lot of steps that are going to be involved. And so I'm trying to think of like the best way to get into this. We did a little bit of a start page that we can get to, should be able to get to just by going to start, and it has nothing in it yet. But I've been thinking, like, maybe it makes sense to give that breadcrumb trail that I talked about last time. If you were with us last week, then you know what I'm talking about, or you might not recall, but I'll go over that part again. Is I hope to have some sort of bar across the top that gives some indication of how far along you are in the process. And I thought about, like, I made comparisons to pizza delivery websites. Like, I think Domino's has one where there's sort of a bunch of steps, and they have chevrons along the way that points from one step to the next to kind of indicate your progress. And that felt like a good, meaningful way to accomplish that to me. So maybe it makes sense to make that chunk of UI that will live across the top. I sort of, if I can draw, can I draw this well? I don't know. Let's try taking a screenshot that we can work on and see how good or poorly this works out. So here's the screenshot, and I'm bringing this up. Doing this on the fly. I've never tried this out, so it might fail. But we've got our screenshot, and I'm going to make a box. Wow, what is going on? Okay, so I'm thinking that the chunk of user interface would live right here, and we would have some text that is teeny tiny. Well, I'm not going to go too far into this because I'm actually not very good with the preview tool, but we'd have a chunk of text here and some sort of arrow to point to the next step, and arrow, and by the end it would just show the last step of what you need before you can get going. And once those steps are complete, all of this user interface chunk would disappear, and you'd just be put into the main app experience. So that's kind of the going off space. So that question for you, if you're here to answer, or if you're thinking about this, you said you like to explore. Do you like? I guess there's like tooltips, and there's a variety of techniques that I've seen applied to websites, and I have mixed feelings on them, but maybe I'm weird in that regard. I'm not crazy about them, frankly, like where they're trying to like point, hey, look here, or look here. So I probably want to, I'm thinking I would want to avoid that, but maybe it's just my own personal distaste for them. So I want to make sure that I talk to some other people about that before I abandon that thought process. So I think we'll add this chunk of user interface, and I think it will be a pretty basic looking rectangle that will span the entire width of the UI and have a height of maybe like an inch or two, and then can have the text boxes there, and we can fill in like the placeholders that or the labels of stuff that I think we'll need, and I think it'll give us a framework for the upcoming streams as we continue this onboarding of everything that will go into that. And I'll be able to show off a little bit of how when you have a reusable fragment of stuff, how you can insert that into multiple templates, because that's something that we're going to have to do. Is that these pages, these start pages are all related, but and will have commonality, but I don't want to make them all inherit from a base template. I think I would rather have them just use composition and bring in the pieces that they need, because we might want to use some of these other chunks in other places. For instance, it's possible that when you're onboarding, I may want the main app view to also have that progress chunk, so that like Osoda has said here, of exploring first, but then being able to get onto the tutorial track as desired or as needed. So I wanted to be able to do both if possible. So let's make that little template fragment. And for now, I will put it right in this view. Well, let's go back to the start view, and we'll put it in here. to keep it aside. Because simultaneously, while I'm doing this onboarding work here, I also got a round of feedback from my wife directly, and so off stream I've been working these things that are the actual like usability experience part from feedback when she tried it this past weekend, and cranking through them. But I don't want to derail what I've been doing on the stream, so I'm going to do that stuff offline and this stuff here and make progress on both fronts. That's my plan there. So let's come over to the start page, and we've got this start HTML element. So let's, start HTML template, what I meant to say. And we need to put this into the app. So what can we do? We can start with a div. This is going to be our block that will go across the top. And we're going to need a bunch of classes on this. And the first thing that we need is I need this thing to be full width. And I'm drawing a blank on what that will be. So we're going to bring up Tailwind. And I've gotten into this habit of just using the search kind of as I'm doing work where I need it, because there's a lot of utility classes. They're easy to forget. And there's good stuff in here for doing this. So width, it's like width full or something. Yeah, that's what I want. So let's start by making this a really dark background color that we can see, and then we'll zero in on the styling that is needed for the site by doing width full, and let's give it a certain height that we want to guarantee. I'll try this for now and just see what it looks like. And we'll say test. And how does that appear? Clearly I got that wrong. So it must not be background color. What is it? Oh, it's not. I'm being dumb. You have to give it a specific color. You can't just say color and hope that it reads your mind. Okay, cool. So this is in the right ballpark. I think it's feeling a little too tall for me. So I'm going to shave it down to try 24. It's feeling a little better, because again, this is mostly going to be text that goes along with some sort of separators. Maybe there's some way that I can add some flair to what those separators look like. Or possibly, no, there's a bunch of ways that we could do this. These could be, what could I do? I'm trying to think of like if there would be little boxes that would make sense, that we can style them individually so that it looks like segments. Because I'm struggling with how am I going to give it that distinctiveness to show that it will be one thing, then the next, then the next, then the next. But we'll worry about that in a second. First thing let's do is go ahead and define each one. And I think I said on the issue, I think I outlined what I think all the steps are. So let's come back to that big issue where I brain dumped everything. Where is it? I think it's this one. And we'll use this as our, chevrons, sorry. What's a chevron? A chevron is a nicer greater than or less than character. That's this thing right here, this arrow is, yeah. So what you've got there is the greater than symbols. When it's an actual, like, this is an SVG icon that I'm using that comes from, not Font Awesome, Zondicons. What I'm using for these, and chevron. There you go. So there's different directions, and I'm using chevron left and chevron right. But I could do greater than and less than. I don't know that screen readers like that, but I don't know. I also don't know how important it is for me to target screen readers right now. Let's go back to the start view, and this user interface for this section, I know that I'm going to want it to be probably a Flexbox that will go horizontally and will be justified so that each one takes up an equal amount of space. So that if I've got 2, it'll take up 50-50. If I've got 3, 4, 25%. You get the idea. So what's going to go in each of these? And what kind of classes do we need to add here? So I think the first thing we need to do is turn this into a Flexbox. And I'm also thinking about, do I want to make this UI responsive? That I'm not sure either. It's not a big use case that I think will be used, but maybe it'll be to give it at least a little bit of thought in case there is a future where I do make mobile apps. It might be worth a little bit of investment to get that to look decent. So we'll put a div, and we'll say, I'll just say start for the moment and replicate this a few times. So I've got 5 steps here, and right now they're all going this way because they're just one after the other. And that's interesting that I would expect a div to be block scoped, but maybe the Flexbox is changing that for some reason or another. Let's come down to the Flex section, and we want to define both the direction this is gonna be. So when the way that Tailwind works is it starts by thinking mobile first. So if you say flex row, or actually I guess I would want flex column to start, what that'll do is it says like at the smallest size, you want your Flexbox to be a column, as in up and down, rather than side to side. And when you hit a certain breakpoint, then you can switch into something else by using these prefixes in Tailwind. So we're going to say that after you get past the really small mobile size, then we're going to switch to a row. I think that's right. And let's test this out. So we've got this in a row, and we can bring up the responsive stuff. So I brought up, if you're not familiar with this, I brought up the dev tools, and Chrome has something similar, but I'm using Firefox. There's a responsive design mode button that you can click, and it will simulate. So I've got a Pixel 2 personally, so this is what I'm using as my test bed, as my device. And you can see what happens when you're at that smaller size. So you can see how it's starting it as a column, and then when you grow to some other size, it will break. Once it hits the breakpoint, it will switch to that other layout. That's how that responsive stuff is designed in Tailwind. But I'm going to put this back on the Pixel 2 for now. Okay, so it does that column stuff, and maybe that's good enough for responsive. I don't want to spend too much time thinking about that. We've got all of these divs that are right next to each other. They're basically on top of each other, and that's not great. So we want to justify the content, I think. I always get these confused. There's flex, there's justify is maybe internal, but I can never remember this right, so we'll have to take a look. Along the container's main axis. So this might be right. So we want to justify between, I think. Try that and see how it looks. Come up here, and yeah, let's take a look at the example. Justify between, they added it to the Flexbox, the container around it, which is what I want to do as well. We'll say justify between, and take a look, and it should spread out the start stuff. Okay. The next thing is to think about the text that's going to exist on those. Or, but actually before that, let's do a little bit more positioning stuff. I don't think I like that yet. So I also do want them to have some amount of internal padding, I believe. So let's add, or you know what, actually let's do this a little smarter. We can do this from Vim and say, Vim doesn't have like multi-cursor support, but it does have the ability to edit a bunch of lines at the same time in a similar way. So you'll see what that looks like in a second. As soon as I hit escape, it should add them all there. I've given it padding between each of the elements, and you can see that on this edge it added a little bit there. And that's good enough for the moment. But the other thing I want to do is get these things to justify to the middle, probably. Or justify is probably the wrong word at this point, but align to the middle, which is possible in Flex and is very painful in other standard HTML box systems. But again, it kind of depends on what is the right thing. So align items, the utilities for controlling how Flex items are positioned along a container's axis. That's what I want. I don't know that it is. Items center. Okay, maybe it's items center. Let's see what happens. Cool. All right, so it's starting to shape up a little bit better. The other thing I want out of this is I want let's go ahead and give it like real, we've got now that we know the box exists, we don't need to use this bright red color anymore. We can add in the styling for what matches the theme of this application. And I think what I want to do is give it some rounded corners. And I'm going to give it, rounded large, I think is the right class. That should give it some big rounded corners. The other rounded corner options are very subtle. Tailwind's designers have some subtle taste, which I appreciate most of the time, but I want something a bit more noticeable in this circumstance. And then let's see, what else do we need? Let's change the color. Maybe it should just stay. I'm debating between, should it be blue? So the color of my apps here, and I'm gonna actually need to turn off my Flux and hopefully things don't bomb out on me. Because I can't actually see the colors like y'all can. So there's blue here, and this part of the user interface is gray, and then this is clearly red. But there's another color in my palette here, is that a blue and a yellow. So really the option choices that I have to work with are either some kind of blue, some kind of gray, or some kind of yellow as the background color. And I don't want this to be like, just slam in your face. Like, that's not the point of this little onboarding thing. It's to get your attention if you need it and provide some help, but also stay out of your way some. So let's play around with some blue colors and see what that looks like. We're gonna do a blue, and the way this blue scale, the way Tailwind's coloring scale works out is the higher the number is, the more intense it is, the more saturation it has. So let's try a low blue saturation, see what that looks like. Okay. So that's looking okay. I'm still not comfortable here with the text. I still think it looks weird having, we've justified between, but if I look at this, so see, this just seems strange. It's pushed all the way to this edge here, and it's just not going to make sense for this last one to have this thing at the very end. So let's go back to the justify items and see if there is another choice that will make more sense. Okay. This is justify between, which is like forcing it out to the maximum edges. And I think this is really what I wanted, was justify around, which seems to give like a uniform spacing around each of the divs, which is a sensible name to choose. So let's see how that looks. It feels way better already. And you can see that we're kind of running up. So this is the top of any other UI that's going to be in this. And if we want this thing to be a reusable component that we can drop into a bunch of places, we're going to want to push down and give this thing some space. And actually, I think I probably want to make this equidistant. So if you look at the top, this is the container that this thing is in. And you can see down here in the inspector that the padding for this is a P8. So the 8 is the unit that is applied. And the unit system for Tailwind is all like relative units. What happens if I type unit? Now let's try typing height. And they might, somewhere they define what the unit system is. Here you go. You can see these numbers, I'm pretty sure correspond, if you went to width, they would be the same thing. But they correspond to certain rem elements, and I think rem is a newish kind of thing in HTML that's like responsive EM, and EM is a relative size based on the font size or something like that. So all of these things are defined relative to your font, which is how it helps them to scale. So that if I ever changed stuff, they would scale accordingly and not just be pixel locked to certain heights. So here we've got H8 is 2 rem, just to give you a framework in your head of why these units, even though these are arbitrary numbers, they roughly match a certain scale that's been defined by the designers. So if we want to make this section stand out kind of consistently, and this is 8, then I think what I want to do is go ahead and add a padding or a margin below this container as 8 as well. And that should give it the space that makes it feel comfortable. So let's say margin bottom 8. That should push that homeschool app down. Now, we look at this again. We've got, there's that yellow highlighting, that's the margin bottom 8. And if we go up to the container, you can see that they're, it's the right size. So it gives it this uniform look between the sections, that this should be about equidistant to that, unless there's some sort of padding on that, which there shouldn't be, I don't think. Okay. We've got this unit that's in here, and it still doesn't look great because the text is not there and there's no delineation between elements. So that's kind of missing. And yeah, there's still some work to go, but we're starting to get there. Maybe to bring this to something that looks a little bit more representative, we can add some more text so that we're not just staring at the start word, because I don't want to fill in with lorem ipsum. I'm not a fan of using lorem ipsum. I think it's never very reflective of the scenarios that you design with. Some people swear by it. Lorem ipsum. And if you've not seen it before, it's basically just fake Latin that gets used to fill in paragraphs of text. But I'm not crazy about it. And it doesn't make sense for something that's so small either. So let's go back to our onboarding, and then now I have to use my brain a little bit to figure out what we should call these things. So this first thing is not really a start; it's more of a welcome, an introduction. And I think it would be fair if people would want to go back to that welcome. So let's try just the word welcome for now. And maybe it comes down to each of these is a single word or just a couple of words, and we blow up the size of the font and really make them stand out so that they're big links that people will want to click on. But I'm not sure. The other thing I'm not sure about is if I want to lock in the size. Because I think, like, if I just type in some junk right here, I think what's going to happen is it's going to blow out that particular cell, and the other ones are going to look a little off, what I speculate. Yeah. So it's trying to allow one cell to grow accordingly, but I want the cells to be of equal size. Let's go back to the Flexbox stuff and see if there's some sizing things that we can make them so that they all match up. And maybe Flexbox is not the right tool for this. Like, there's width utilities that we can use to put this stuff on a grid, but I'm not sure yet. So utilities for controlling how an individual item is positioned along its container's axis. So this seems like if it's varying, if the different elements have different heights, what you do about them, with them. That might be relevant later, I'm not sure. It doesn't feel right yet. Utilities for how lines are positioned in multi-line flex containers. Well, I don't want this to be a multi-line flex container. I want this all to be a single row. So I would hope that this one does not come into play. Although here they've got, now here they're using examples of variable width, or fixed width. But what they're doing in this example is saying width of thirds and then having 2 wrap. But we should be able to change this. Like if I really have a setup where it is 5 cells, then we should be able to come in here and change this to width of 1/5, and that should apply for all of the cells. And now coming back over here, okay, now my junk example, I'm going to trim that down, but at least it's looking sort of correct. There are some other interesting parts of this, that the text here is feeling like it's, I guess for your direction, it's going to the left. I may want to center that too. So yeah, got a welcome. Let's change the text. Whoops. Change the tag text here. The first step was after the welcome was going to be let's call it start your school year, because that is the first thing that was the first piece of data that was needed after the welcome screen was a school year. That brings us back down to something much more reasonable. And after the school year is a grade. So let's say create a grade level. Again, this is kind of notional copy. I'm not really crazy about these labels, and I think for real, when I get this used in the real world, if I have real users come in, real homeschool teachers, I will ask them immediately of like, do these terms carry meaning for you? Is this actually valuable, or would something else be better? But we need something to go on, and we are not the users of the app necessarily. Although if you're a homeschool teacher, reach out to me and we'll chat. Yeah, we'll carry on. So after creating a grade level, we'll say add a course and make your first course task. Okay. And welcome to Homeschool app. I still don't have a name for this product, so we'll continue to use that kind of placeholder name. So those are our labels. You can see that this looks pretty junky, right? We've got some of these are wrapping, some of them are not. Some of them, like their spacing is weird. So I think what I want to do is, what do I want to do? Probably, what would feel right? Should it be centering the items, maybe? Well, first let's try dropping the color down to even lighter color. See if that makes an impact. It starts to be almost so washed out you can't see it, which is, I don't think, what I'm going for. Let's try yellow. And try, let's make it very yellow for a second. Ooh. That's intense. I don't like that either. It looks like, reminds me of a bumblebee for some reason. I guess the black text and the yellow. And bring that down. What does the look like with less? That again, there starts to get to this point where it just looks washed out, which is not what I'm going for. I do want to get attention without looking washed out. So I'm kind of feeling between this yellow versus that other blue we had a little bit ago. I don't know. I'll stick with this for now. Talking to my wife about this, like there is this theme that has blue and yellow, but there weren't actually a lot of good places to put the yellow. So a lot of the app elements, if we go to here, I mean, I have some kind of yellow lines between some stuff, but when it came to creating buttons, the buttons in the app were they kind of had to be blue because the yellow had like no contrast and it was really hard to see. So yellow is really just meant to be a very subtle splash of color where I can apply it. But this might be a scenario where using this yellow as a kind of in-your-face banner at the start may be really valuable. What do y'all think? Blue, yellow, any opinions? I'm open to them. So let's come back and see what we can do about these actual items. See if we can fix them up a little bit. You like the blue, Soda? Well, we'll stick with blue then for now. You win. Your vote wins for the moment. Okay, but we'll keep that and we'll play with some text color and some stuff like that. The other thing about it that is a little too strong for me is like one piece of advice that if you like start doing any sort of design stuff, like I've taken a bunch of graphic design classes on Lynda, so I'm take this for what it's worth. I'm not a professional graphic designer, but I play one on TV, I guess, if you will. They would talk about how, like, when you have colors that you're dealing with, the brain is not really used to dealing with like straight up black. I mean, obviously we can look at stuff and see black, and that can be okay. But a lot of times when you encounter what you think is black on a website, there might if you inspect it, it might not actually be 000 or black or whatever. It might be a very, very subtle dark gray. And I guess the theory behind it is that it takes you out of this like such an intense contrast and can give you these subtle hints that you're tied into the theme. So with that thought, I wonder if we try text. I think it's text with like maybe not blue. Maybe we might need a gray. I'm just curious what this will look like, and if I even got it right. So we set, yeah, so that was a correct color. And it's so hard to notice. My fear though is it might be like washing out because we're doing a dark blue on a lighter blue, and while it ties together, it might be, yeah, may not be right. What else could we try? The other thing we could try is changing to a gray, so that we, like I said, instead of using straight up black, we get a mostly black, and just kind of bring that contrast down just a tiny bit. Because you don't want to do it too much, because you want people that, especially people with vision issues, to be able to read stuff clearly. So you have to be careful with this stuff. But yeah, just a little touch of it might lighten your experience and have a very subtle effect on your users. So the other thing I want to do, perhaps, is, like, if you look over here, this thing just looks like jammed in here. And that's just because I gave it a quick padding 2 on this. And I don't think that's right either. I think it needs more space. That's another lesson you would often encounter when reading, like, how to become a designer kind of stuff, is give things space to breathe. So we'll change all of these, and we'll try them on padding 4 and see how that looks. So it doubles the space. And we still have weirdness with, like, some of these are wrapping and some of these are not. So that still seems strange to me, and that's going to be a problem because just the nature of the length of some of these, like add a course, there's no way I'm going to be able to make that wrap on 2 lines without seeming weird. But I do think that by tightening this up a little bit with some more padding, it does give it some breathing room. Let's try one more level to see. Go to 6 and see if that does anything we like. Okay. And what else could we try? We could add some breaks in here to force some of these on lines that we like. So, for instance, there definitely could be a break here between start your and school year. And same thing with the grade level. And we could probably even do that on course tasks. And this, I do not normally recommend manually inserting breaks into your user interface. That has a bunch of ramifications. Like, and one of those ramifications, in fact, is if we put this back on this. I mean, you can see I pretty much have screwed up the mobile view. I'm not going to worry about mobile right now, but it would need some work, because those breaks in a mobile only view of the world, you would not want them there. They're just not going to make sense. You probably want them in a single line because they'll probably take up the full width of the mobile UI. And there are ways that we could make sure that the breaks only appear on a larger than normal size. But again, I'm not really going to worry about the mobile experience first unless I've got a bunch of users who say, hey, we really want to be able to do this from mobile. Let's change this to just to give it some extra stuff. I say add a course to your grade. And that's totally going to bomb out here, so let's add another break. And just so we control every element of this along the way, now we're forcing everything to be 2 lines long, so kind of starting to fill out this stuff. I still am not crazy about some elements of this. Like there's no visual separation yet between these. Also, I'm thinking it might be time to, like, I may have to bring that color down so that you actually get some visual pop from the text. Text needs to speak and be recognizable to people. and be something that they want to read. And right now, it doesn't have any oomph. I'm trying to figure out ways to improve that. So the other thing I want to try is, because we've got everything left aligned, it all and they're all at different lengths and stuff, it just feels kind of weird. So let's go and see what centering that text looks like. And this is center, the one we want here. Because we already have, well, we have item center. So it must not be item center. That's the up and down. So we need internally the content center, maybe. Or it might just be center, text center within each actual div. Yeah, that's probably it. So let's come in here and say text center. I don't know that we need to do that way. That does the trick, but maybe we can put it in the parent, and it should propagate down to the children. Yeah, that way we're not replicating so much CSS. So these labels feel okay. Again, there's no visual cue of what to do between them. Maybe this is where we get to that chevron stuff, Osoda. But then we could add little div elements here that are nothing but that chevron character, that chevron that points to the right. Let's try that. And maybe that'll start to give it the feel of some continuity between these elements. That is going to mess up for certain, though. Crud. That's going to mess up the fact that I'm using width of 1/5 right now. That's not going to work. Hello, LeBron's Ames. Welcome. Appreciate you coming in. We're working on some template stuff today for some onboarding. If you haven't gathered that yet, that's what's going on. And trying to figure out how to make this look nice. That's the challenge at the moment. And struggling a bit. So what could we try? I mean, we could add some border, but if I just had let's think about this. If I added a border, just like a white barrier between these, it would serve some purpose to separate them, but at the same time, it's like, ew. Shoot. What can we do? This is Tailwind Css, which is a really cool framework, and I've talked about this a few times, but what I find interesting about Tailwind is that rather than having components like Bootstrap, this is not a knock on Bootstrap, I've used it in the past too, Tailwind offers this utility idea where you actually build up your components by putting little pieces in there. So you learn basically a pattern language for using CSS. So this is a padding 2 on all sides, and then 2 is a certain relative element size. By learning those conventions, you can kind of quickly adopt some stuff, and you don't have to go into your own CSS file. You just sort of edit the HTML until it looks like the way you want it to, which is pretty cool. So what can we do? I'm even sort of mousing it over here. I want that chevron look, and I'm afraid to how to get it. Yeah, that could be interesting. Give a different background color. Oh, that's a good thought. Let's see what that looks like, just out of curiosity. So maybe we can kind of candy stripe it. Is that the right word? Let's come into the second one and say BG blue 100. And we'll do it to the third one as well. I'm suddenly reminded of Dr. Seuss for some reason. I don't know why. It serves a function there. I'm not like discounting entirely, but I'm not sure. Is it something where maybe what if there was a I wonder if we could do gradients? Can Tailwind do gradients? Good question. No, it's not. Looks like it's not built in. That's unfortunate. Maybe they think that gradients are something you should not use. And I think they have some CSS cost. So I was just wondering if what if there was a very subtle gradient of like a dark blue on the left and then a fade quickly to the light blue, and then each one would kind of have that sort of flow to it. But yeah, it's not in my toolbox right now, and I don't feel like writing a bunch of custom CSS just for this. So I'll throw that idea out the window for the moment. Well, what else do we need? Like right now, these are definitely not interactive. So that is something that I know we're going to need. I don't remember. Okay, there's a couple of strategies for this. These are all divs right now, but maybe, and here's my challenge, is should each of these steps, like the whole thing, be clickable or just kind of the text area? Because I could do that. I could let's kind of compare and see what it's like. So one strategy would be to put an href here, and we'll say class is hover underline, so that when you hover over that text, it will do what you think it should do, and we'll close it off with another anchor tag. So if we get that scenario, then we get this, where you hover and you get an underlined text. But notice, like if I'm on the outside of this box, I've got my mouse sort of on the edges around the text, I don't get the link. So the other strategy that might work is to make, instead of using a div, what if we replaced it with and made the whole thing an anchor tag? I'm curious what that would be like. So now this entire area is clickable. Yeah, give Tailwind a try. It's a pretty easy one to get set up. I'm not even using like a build setup. I'm really just importing from the CDN. In fact, let me just show you real quick, since it's not hard to show. I'm literally just linking in a style tag that's coming from the unpackaged CDN, and I was off to the races. All of this UI that I've built here is using stock Tailwind. Now, it's not the most glamorous UI in the world. I acknowledge that. But yeah, you can get going pretty fast with it. So I think I'm liking this idea of taking out, of making the whole thing clickable. That feels right to me. I'm wondering if we change this. Does this work? Can we do hover on? Yeah, cool. Okay, so it's kind of feeling good-ish. Still not great, but it's giving it more life than it had. And it certainly feels better than this version, where you just kind of come over here and get the hover line, underline. What if we do both? So we got hover, underline. Feels pretty old school to do that. I think I like it when it's just more of a no underline. Okay, so let's try and take this and apply this same set of code to all of these divs and replace them all. And what that'll do is that'll all go back to looking kind of the bland, the bland starting point of all just being blue, but at least at the interaction stage of this, it will, whoops, look better. And there's probably a faster way to do this, but this is how I'm doing this today. Okay, and I need to change this and to that. And I guess we have this. This one's going to require a bit more cleanup because it's both. Or you know what we can do instead? We've already got the anchor tag. Let's clean off the div. And yeah, I need to brush up on Vim macros, or is that you saying that? Yeah, I don't remember how to use. There's like this debate I have with myself internally all the time of, is it something that's worthy of a macro to make something reusable in that scenario, or just leave it? I don't have a good answer. Okay, didn't take too long though. So, whoops, almost got it. Change that to BG blue 100. All right, so these are all clickable now. They still feel a little lame in they're a very, very simple thing. I wonder, there's a limitation to how much Tailwind provides with like its hover utilities out of the box. So every one of these things is based on utilities. So when you have hover stuff and what it builds, not all of them are built by the framework immediately. And since I'm not doing a custom build of Tailwind, I don't have access to every variant of hover. Otherwise, the CSS file would be gigantic. So they picked what they thought was a good set of things that are hoverable. And I just don't remember where I can find that in the framework documentation. And this is some other portion of the site. Can we find it quickly is the question. I mean, the other thing we can do is just try stuff out, and if it doesn't work, oh well. So there like for example, what else could we do to make this pop a little bit? There's a shadow, like box shadow stuff. Whoops, not what I wanted. Shadow. So this would be interesting potentially, but I don't know that this will work on hover. That's when I would want to apply it. Let's try. Let's just see what will happen if I did that. Hover, shadow. Whoops, not the page. All right, it did it. So the hover shadow does work. Is it good though? That's the question. Like, look at the, wow, that's weird. I don't know if y'all are seeing the same bug I am, but check out this corner when I'm not hovering. There's definitely some weirdness going on with the framework here of it loses the border radius, which is totally strange. Let's try a large shadow just to see what it looks like. We can really blow it out. I don't know, maybe that's okay. Even though the border radius is screwing up, like I kind of like this thing, it looks very flat to me. And I'm not going for something that is really popping out in your face. But I don't know. Let's try it. So we want to put in a hover shadow. Oops. Hover shadow large. Now that we've got this here, because I think what even though the border radius is going away, when you hover, there's a good likelihood that people won't really notice that very much. Interesting to me is that there doesn't seem to be any shadow on the top. Or maybe it's all like, maybe they specifically designed it so all their shadows, are only below. Curious. We could try shadow inner. I'm just experimenting at this point of what looks good. Oh, that does not look good. Okay. And let's change these to medium. I'm gonna bring it down a notch. Okay. So I think that's feeling all right. I still don't know what I'm going to do about the separation between them, what that visual separation is. And maybe there's a way in CSS to kind of create an arrow of some kind. I feel like I've seen it in the past, but I don't remember. I do remember I used to work with a really talented CSS coworker who knew a lot about CSS. And I want to say that at some point he made something that basically was a box that was like in CSS was rotated by 45 degrees and then would be attached to something, attached to another div so that it could look like that kind of carryover between pieces. Maybe there's something there, but I don't know. I don't know that I have the skill or want to spend the time to research here. So what do we have? We've got these links that go to different places. They kind of indicate what they are. The other way we could do this is we're still using the standard font, so that it looks okay. But what if we try and play with that font a little bit? Let's close this. And so say font thin. How's that going to look? And I'm trying to add a little class to it, I guess. Font weight. What do we got for options? Thin is very thin. How about light? So I don't want it to feel like a big, heavy banner knocking on your face. Something about that just feels more crisp to me. I don't know if that comes through well in the stream or not. So I'm going to stick with that. And so I guess I should pause for a minute. I've been spending a lot of time looking at this one thing. Sometimes the process for making a website is playing. I think that's what I'm doing. What you all are experiencing is me just experimenting with stuff until it looks okay to me. And again, I'm not a perfect visual designer, so what looks okay to me might look just egregious to you, and certainly egregious to professionals who are like, what the heck is this guy doing? But my hope is that, the refinements, that it starts out kind of rough, and then you continue to polish a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. You can see where it ends up. And if you've been watching the stream, we started with a red box with some black text up in the corner. So it is a process to get there. And I think this has come along quite a ways. The other stuff we could try is to really go, like, there's a visual stuff that's kind of getting to me here, that we've got this dark blue and this light blue. And it almost feels out of place because of that. So I'm wondering, what if we make it the same blue as this one. So this is a blue 700, what I'm using up there. So what do we change this to blue 700 and say text white? Is it just text white? I don't know. Yeah, it's text white. So now, whoa, we'd have to fix it for the hover. And its size is starting to feel too big. There's also this like element of, I don't want this to take over the whole user interface. Like there's still going to be stuff but below here that people actually need to take action on. So you don't want your focus to be stuck up here. Wow, look at that. Look at what that hover is doing. Oh, that can't stay. It's like blowing out the size on the vertical. That's super weird. Huh. Well, I do think I like this, using this dark blue better. It adds a visual, it pulls together this top and this section, and then is also going to give us a separation for what will go down here. Because, you know, when I have this starting, getting back to like, what is the start page going to be? I've said that this thing is going to be basically the copy to be like, hello, welcome to the app. At this rate, given the amount of text, the screen real estate I have, I'll probably put some kind of image on a side and then put the welcome stuff on this side. So you got a sort of a 2-column experience. And then, you know, we need some stuff to indicate that you're on this particular step. So that would be this section right here. We would change this. Gosh, I gotta get rid of that shadow stuff. I think that's really screwing stuff up. Let's ditch this. See if it brings us back into something reasonable. No. Okay, maybe it's the hover. What's going on there? Well, I'll worry about that later. So getting back to the thought process behind this, like we've got this bar now. It has some labels on it that are going to be the things that add the continuity to the site. I still need to figure out how to show that one leads into the other. I could attempt to put some kind of div in between them, and maybe it makes sense to, like, what could we do there? The unit scale is the biggest unit scale that's available, I think, is like out of 12. But I could be totally wrong. Width. Go back to the width stuff. Yeah, there's a 12 scale in here. It's conceivable that does this math add up? So if I had 1, 2, 3, 4 chevrons, and the other 8 units were devoted to these labels, would that work? I'm thinking it's not going to work. But we can make an attempt, because I really there needs to be some kind of carryover between them, and I think it's failing on that front right now. So let's take this and let's clear out the text in them. And it's not going to be a link. So let's just delete everything in there and say this is a div again. And put another div, and I need the chevron that points to the right. So where am I going to get that from? The daily template has that. This SVG right here should do it. we'll do this. So here's the thought process. Change this to be, I could either use 2 out of 12. I'll use 2 out of 12 just to keep everything in the same base system. Obviously 1 out of 6 is the same, but 2 out of 12 kind of indicates intent. And then for here, I could say this is class of 1 out of 12. And I could do that between each of these. Actually, before I do that, let's replace all of these at once while it's still uniform. So we've got 2 out of 12 for those, and then we're going to put the divs between them. This may look like junk, I don't know, but it's worth a shot. Okay, that hover's got to go, but I think that's actually surprisingly better than I anticipated. And maybe it's because that justify around was eating up more space than I thought. Although this is now moving to a third line, which is not so great. So we can, what's the next thing we can do? I can give this, so if I expand this thing, yeah, if you give it enough space, it will wrap appropriately or expand out appropriately, but I don't know that I want to depend on that because I can't depend on a certain stuff being on a certain screen size. People are going to have smaller screens than my 15-inch MacBook Pro here. So the text needs to work on a variety of sizes. Let's see, we can do, what can we do? It's already getting the right stuff there, but we can bring the padding, all of these padding 6, we can change them to, back to 2, 4. We're changing them to 4. All right. Oh, interesting. I wonder if the padding, because check this out, like the hover is looking okay again. I wonder if the padding was causing the issues. There's too much padding, so it was blowing out, trying to go beyond the text shadow, was trying to go in the paddings area, perhaps. That's curious. Let's refresh just this one block, and yeah, look. So these are working fine. This one's looking weird, but let's inspect these. I suspect the padding for this one will fit inside this box with P4. Yep, that purple fits perfectly inside there, but the P6 padding is going to be outside. So that's why the hover looks strange. So we're going to go back to this, but that's good news because that means we can keep the hover and it would be fine. Although now it's time to change that hover text color. So anywhere we have hover BG blue 100, I need to insert before it hover text. Which color should that be? How about blue 900? So change those. All right. Cool. Again, it's not a masterpiece, but I'm feeling kind of good about that. And I think we also have, now that we know that it was the padding that was causing the problem and not the shadow, I wonder if adding the shadow back, if that looks okay or not. So let's say hover shadow medium was what I used last time. Yeah, I don't know. There's still the weirdness on the corner, but maybe that's okay. Okay, I'm gonna go for it. Mm-hmm. All right, so what do we have? We've got this UI that we've brought the height down quite a bit. And so we've tightened it up there. And we have this amount of space to work with for whatever kind of display that I'm going to do. Maybe we can throw in some quick text to finish this off, so you're not looking. So that the only thing so it's not the only thing we didn't do. I'm not saying that very well. So wow, what's the right words? We did more than just this bar. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what we could try to do here, is get a Flexbox that has two elements that are in a row, and one is an image and the other one is a text area. So let's go back to we're still on the start page. We haven't actually extracted this anywhere, which is okay. We'll extract it later. And if you haven't done that before in Django, it means creating a new file, taking everything that's in this tag, and putting it in that new file, and then using an include directive to say like open brace percent include my file name .html. And that's what you'd have to do to include this chunk as a reusable piece in multiple places. But I don't think we need to take that step right now. So we've got, I'm going to delete this thing. We don't need that anymore. Now we have this clean slate to work from. So we want a new Flexbox here. And we have class is flex, and we want this to be a flex row. I'm not going to worry about mobile UI at this moment. And it's going to have two divs inside of it. Oops. So this is one of them, this is the other, and we can say, let's give them a specific width. We want each of these to take up half. Let's use the full amount of space, 1/2. And let's make this also be a widthful thing. Okay, we can't see anything yet, so for the moment, let's add some background color. Again, I was about to do that same silly thing again where I was just going to say color. Let's add background red 500 for one side, and whoops, there's too many quotes there. And background, well, I don't want to, I was going to pick green, but some of you might be colorblind, so let's not do that. Background purple. That's a different kind of color blindness. I'm kind of doomed no matter what. Let's say yellow on the other side. Oops, there's nothing in them. Hello? Okay. So here's where is our area to add stuff to. It's gonna take up as much space as we give it, or as we put content in there. What can we put in there? I mentioned last time that there is a site. There's a resources section on Tailwind, and one of the places that you can get stuff from is this really cool vector art that somebody's made available for free. And thank you, Katerina Limpitsuni, sorry, of stuff we can do, and we can search. How about we search for school? See what Algolia brings up. Pretty good little set here. I like this one. This one feels good to me. It feels good because this is about homeschooling. And realistically, well, I have a bias. I will certainly admit that. But in my knowledge of the homeschoolers that I know, in the communities that I'm involved in, the mom is the one doing the homeschooling. So I feel like this image here of what looks to be a mother and a child kind of embracing and dealing with school seems like an appropriate picture to use for someone. The other thing about Undraw that's cool is you can pick what color you want this to be. So this image is sort of targeted at this 6C63FF, and that's not the color we're using in our app. So let's come into the app and pick or inspect the color that we've got. See what that color is. So we're using BG Blue 700, but that corresponds to this color, 2B 6C B0. So 2B 6C B0. Is that what I said? Yep. And what you may have noticed is that now the child's backpack is that nice color blue, and maybe even the tints behind it changed. I don't know. So let's take this and we'll download the SVG and we'll save it. And it's an SVG file. Whoops. So it apparently, I opened it in Image Optim, which is a program I have to optimize images, and it found some savings to get out of there. So that's cool. I didn't need that, but thanks, Image Optim. And so the thing I want to do is I'm going to change this text, and we're going to put the SVG right in here. And it might be a monster, so we'll see how terrible this is. But if I need to put it in a file somewhere else, I will, but I don't need to at the moment. And that image file name was Undraw Back to School. So we're going to open in a split from downloads, Undraw Back to School. Ooh, yeah, it's huge. It's 40,000 characters. Okay, maybe I don't want to pull this all into my template. Well, sure, let's do it. For the point of demonstration, let's do it. Okay. How badly did I just mess up my template? Okay. So it has a set height here. That's interesting. So we may need to adjust that. Let's look at what that did. Oh, nothing apparently. Did I not save that file? Ah, okay. So we are we're staring at some weirdness here. So we've still got the red background, and the height is also locked. So we want to set the height to match whatever the width is of the app. So let's change this to, let's get rid of, I wonder if we can do this. If I can get rid of height and width and let it take that information from its environment, so it's not locked into a size. Yeah, cool. So now it's taking up the maximum amount of space that it's given. And the other thing that we want to do is get rid of VG red here. Oh, cool. I'm liking this. So we can start with that, and then, frankly, maybe I just leave that there. Like I might give it a little bit of margin at the top, maybe, to push it down, but it sort of depends on what this other side looks like. So let's ditch the yellow too, and go back to good old white for the background. And I know I said I hate lorem ipsum. I'm going to use it anyway. So I'm a hypocrite, but whatever. Because I don't want to think too hard, or this stream has already been going pretty long. And I don't even care. This is not lorem ipsum. This is text about lorem ipsum, but it's good enough for this demonstration. I'm going to put it in here, and we're going to come over to here, hit refresh, and that looks pretty junky because we haven't adjusted the look of that text at all, or the padding or spacing. But I think this is where I can put this nice like welcome letter to say, hey, welcome to this app. The focus is on your kid, and we're going to walk you through getting started. And I might even sign my name, since this is an application that I am producing. And I mentioned in the last stream that I want this to be like personalized and really lean into the fact that this is developed by one person. I will probably sign off on the bottom of this myself as a way to welcome. But man, it's amazing what a little illustration can do to add to your app. So I really appreciate that person who, appreciate Katerina and her making these things open and available. It's a beautiful piece of art. I think that's where I want to wrap up tonight. So we've done a lot to get going on this. This is the first thing that someone will see when they sign up right now. It still has a long way to go, but it is coming along. And I think we're going to put some user interface elements there. I don't think I will, knowing what I know about streaming, doing copywriting is really not an activity that kind of comes out well while you're trying to talk through stuff at the same time. So my guess is I will work through this copy offline, and hopefully the next time that we all meet up, this page will be in what I think will be its final initial form, and we can move on to the form creation that will go into this next step of the process. And yeah, I think that's probably where we'll be. So I appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you for your questions. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope you learned something and found this time valuable. And if you want to catch up with me, you can follow me on Twitter. I do post this stuff to YouTube if you want to find these things later or find resources that I mentioned. But yeah, appreciate it. Hope everybody stays healthy out there, as Osoda said. It's a good point. We're still in this pandemic that we're in, so do your best to stay as healthy as you can. Take care.